Out-of-control violence on city streets. Nashville approaches a record high for murders, including a disturbing number of young victims.
One death of a young person is too many.
Our teens are dying for no reason.
It's our own kids that are shooting our own kids.
My heart is broken to pieces. It would never be the same.
It does no good being in the ground.
And Nashville children growing up surrounded by violence are suffering their own wounds.
When an elementary school student sees someone get shot, what does that do to them?
Gangs will recruit elementary school students.
What's being done to make our community safer?
On your mark. I'm trying to start a program out here. Get set.
I'm trying to bring the parents together.
Go.
There's a tremendous change since we started.
It is awesome to have people like that in our life.
News Channel 5 presents Enough. Violence killing our kids. It is a number that is almost incomprehensible. More than 100 people killed in our city since the beginning of 2017.
They are our friends, our neighbors, and they're leaving behind broken families and broken neighborhoods. City leaders are struggling to grapple with the problem.
Especially when so many of the victims are teenagers. Here now is Chris Conti.
Some people call this a crisis. Some people call it an epidemic. But when children as young as 7 are being murdered in broad daylight, what this truly is unacceptable. So tonight we are saying enough to the violence killing our kids. It snuck in quietly, moved in, often hidden behind a cloak of darkness. Then suddenly, all at once, we started noticing it was there.
And we begin with that breaking news. A young girl has been shot.
A spike in homicides, and tonight a city in crisis.
A community in shock after a 7-year-old is shot and killed by her 2-year-old cousin.
9 days into the new year, Nashville experienced its first homicide. No one could have predicted then the pain that would soon follow.
It's our own kids that are shooting our own kids.
Al Ganji's 14-year-old son, Clayton, was with friends on June 24th of this year when one of them pulled out a gun. And now Clayton is gone. What did you lose?
Everything. My whole life.
This is what violence is doing to our community.
A 14-year-old boy that loved me. I loved him more than anything in this world. And he's gone because of some stupid kid's mistake.
Clayton was this year's 57th homicide victim. The teenagers who shot him had such little regard for his life that they couldn't be bothered to call for help.
Shot once in the side. The bullet ricocheted, tore up his insides, and he bled out. He was then pushed out of the car in the parking lot of the hospital by his friends and left there to die.
Came in and shot someone.
It is a story repeated too many times.
He's been shot a couple times.
In too many different ways.
We need to put a stop to all these guns and these violence.
It was October 8th when Shatika Begley lost her daughter, Debrianna. The 16-year-old was hit by a bullet during a drive-by shooting at the Casey Homes in East Nashville.
I was holding my baby in my arms when she died, taking her last breath. Should no mother never have to go seeing their daughter die in their arms? Should nobody never have to go through that? I swear, Nunu, I love you so much, baby.
Done with the troubles.
To this day, no arrests have ever been made in Debrianna's death.
Oh, I'm going home.
Y'all took her. That's something I would never get back. Never turn y'allself in.
No more.
She was the city's 91st homicide victim. She dreamed of becoming a lawyer. When you hear that number, 91 people, what do you think?
It tears my heart apart. It tears my heart to pieces.
I'm going
Of the more than 100 people killed this year, 25 of the victims have been under the age of 20. Keith, Colby, Harmony, Janicia, Eduardo, Ahmad, on and on and on it goes.
They took a piece of my life, my heart. This is my only daughter.
Seemingly unending violence that knows no boundaries, no limits, and no minimum age requirement. Harmony Warfield was 7 years old.
It is all right to cry. It's your baby. You don't get her back. It's all right to cry. It's your granddaughter. She's not coming back. It's all right to cry.
On a warm June afternoon, her small casket was put in the tiniest of hearses. Stuffed animals were placed gently inside as she left for the cemetery. How is this happening?
And you just sit there and you think this shouldn't happen.
Right. It shouldn't.
As the mayor of Nashville, Megan Barry knows this is a problem she cannot ignore.
Do you feel responsible personally to fix this?
Sure. I mean, you know, as the mayor of this city, I absolutely feel a personal responsibility for the safety of our citizens. So this is something that weighs on my mind every day.
So what's causing this? Part of the problem is tied to the city's growth. As neighborhoods gentrify, those who were already struggling economically are being pushed further away from the urban core. That makes it harder to access public transportation, harder to access jobs, and easier to turn to crime.
How do we fix this?
There isn't one answer. There's many answers. I mean, and it takes an entire community to wrap their arms around this.
For the mayor, part of the solution is policing. 70 more officers have been hired in the last year.
You have a good night.
22 of them are focused primarily on community policing and foot patrols.
We know that if a child is engaged and busy and learning a skill set and with adults that are mentoring them, their outcomes are going to be way better.
To keep kids off the street, the city is trying to get additional funds to have community centers open longer.
When you just hear about one of these kids who dies, what goes through your mind?
Well, pain for that family. You know, one death of a young person is too many.
And yet city officials, city police cannot fix this problem themselves.
What do you hope these kids learn from your son's death?
The gun violence is not cool.
Al Ganji wants other parents, other teenagers to listen to him. He admits he should have been more involved in Clayton's life, should have done more about the Snapchats his son was receiving where kids were showing off their guns, should have known Clayton was using Uber to get around because he was too young to have a license.
Even after your son died, we had all these homicides.
Kids don't learn. Parents, they have to wake up.
6 months have now come and gone since Clayton Ganji was killed. Al Ganji has never found the courage to visit his son until now.
That's not how I remember my son. I wish that day would have never happened. I can't erase it. I can't go back in time. If I could, I'd rather it be me than him.
Standing at his son's grave, he cannot help but wonder what he could have done differently, what you can do differently.
One parent opens up their eyes and says, you know, maybe my kid is doing something wrong.
Because if we don't start saying enough to the violence killing our kids,
yeah, it puts them in the ground for no reason.
This is where too many of them will end up.
I'm a grieving father. My son lost his life for the stupidest thing in the world, stupidity.
Coming up.
It's not unusual to get a firearm off a juvenile these days.
And later.
It's too much killing, and it's too much gangsters.
When enough continues.